Hello, my internet chums. This is Dan from Blotworks. This is, I think, number 3 in my new series of looking at developing a lamp from the sort of first idea right through to the final product, and sort of watching how that, what all the twists and turns that process will take along the way. Um, so this time, I just want to talk to you about the problems that come out from an initial idea. So the first idea is always pure and beautiful and simple, and then of course you place it in the real world, and suddenly the real world wants to pull it in all sorts of different directions and make sure that it's not going to be simple. Um, but also it can be a positive thing, because also sometimes the real world says, actually, I like your idea, but there's a better one, or there's even this, have you thought about this? So that's a cool thing. So it's all part of the fun of the design process. So I'm going to show you, I think, sort of 4 or 5 of the problems. I won't talk about the solutions this time, because I'm going to try and keep this under 5 minutes. So we'll just talk about the problems, and then we'll sort of talk about how I resolve them later on. So last time I introduced you to this beautiful prototype. So the idea, just want to show you, use this to show you the idea. The idea is that we have a counterbalanced top bar with the light on one end and the movable weight on the other, and that, as it moves backwards and forwards, that stays horizontal, and then we adjust it so it can, and it moves forward, so it moves from here to there, where it extends over desk area simply by applying a weight. So I can have it back here, or I can just move that weight, put it over here, and it's fully extended. As you can see, I'm propping it up. So the first issue, which I'll use this to demonstrate, is that that's not that easy, because actually what you find out is what I loved about this was that horizontal line and the vertical line, that this is always vertical, this counterbalance, that bit there, and it points straight down to the weight that is holding this in position, which is the theory, that weight. But actually that needs to be an infinite weight, because to do with the leverage as you approach the point that you want it to balance at, which is the centre of this weight, the leverage between the point that's touching the desk and the centre of the weight gets smaller and smaller. That distance, which is from there to there at the moment, is from there to there. And so there's a point where this is always going to be at a funny angle, because it's never going to push down there where I want it. It'll always be back there. So that'll always be at an angle, and that will never point down to the weight. So that's the problem. So that's like that's a real shame, because I really like that. So there's various ways we can deal with that, and a lot of it is just kind of rolling with it and saying, well, where does that take us? So the next issue I will show you on this slightly more beautiful prototype, which is taking the designs that I think I showed you last time, SketchUps. So this is kind of one of those ideas. It's the spiral shape. It's the same idea, but this time I've got a vertical rod that I move with that. So I won't talk about that now, but the next thing is this. So this, of course, has to be of a certain weight, because it needs to have a bulb in it and a bulb holder. And it needs to be as far out as possible, because you don't want it to be, because the whole point is to have an overhanging light over your desk area. So consequently, the length of that and the weight of that means that I need quite a weight on this end. So this has to be necessarily short, so that it's within the part of this lamp, but it has to counterbalance that. So that's another issue. So we're kind of going to play around with those weights, and this needs to be adjustable as well, ideally. So that's problem number 2. Problem number 3 is this cable. Of course, without the cable, it is completely all down to gravity and balance and equilibrium. But the minute you put this cable in, it's this kind of fairly random factor, because a cable has a weight. So if it's hanging to the floor, it's a whole length of that, a metre of cable, this is standard lighting cable, 3-core flex, and it has a certain weight to it, and it also has a certain springiness to it. So if you do, prop it up on the table, it's going to act as a spring, so it will, as you can see, move the thing around. So you can't anymore have it just as a sort of totally free hanging thing. So that's a big one for me. That's probably the biggest of the problems, because suddenly it's not a freestanding, pure balance thing. So that's the fourth one. Third problem. Fourth one is about the angle of this. It's all about the horizontal lines for me. But actually you also want this light to shine, ideally maybe just across at an angle or something. So you really, once you accept that it's not always going to be horizontal, you think, well, actually that looks all right like that. So you want to be able to adjust that. So then it's about moving this weight, I think. It's partly about setting it there, and then you adjust the angle depending on, what position this is in. With this counterweight here, so this will slide up and down. But that has to be, it has to be quite a big weight, and it needs to be easily done so that it's not too fiddly. You don't want to be doing that and then spending ages trying to get that right. So that's just a usability issue as much as anything, but it's something that we need to consider. So I'm going to stop there. We'll do another one in the next 2 or 3 days, and looking at developing that, using, solving those problems and moving on a bit. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.